spring is a really great time to think about adding a mulch to your garden. So a mulch is it's just a layer of material that you're adding to the top of the garden soil. And there's a few reasons why this is beneficial to the garden. So the first one is it actually retains the moisture in your soil. So we're adding it to the surface, we're locking in the moisture so the roots can get to that, the moisture. The second reason is it can regulate the temperature of your soil. So early season, it can actually warm the soil up. It acts as like a thermal blanket on your soil. And then towards getting into the season, when the soil starts to warm up, it can actually regulate it and keep it a little bit cooler as well. The third reason is to suppress the weeds. So if we're putting a nice thick layer of mulch around the garden, we are blocking out the light so the weeds won't grow so well. And also it will condition the soil depending on what kind of mulch you're using. So we can have organic mulches, which are the most common ones, or we can have inorganic ones. So when I talk about inorganic, I'm talking about black plastic sheeting or cardboard. So something you're putting over the surface, which again is going to suppress the weeds. It's blocking out the light, keeps in the moisture. But I am going to use an organic one. I've got farmyard manure here. Very important to know not to use fresh farmyard manure on your garden. It's just too strong, it will end up scorching your plant. So this is very well rotted down, so it will need to be rotted down for at least a year, or you can just buy that direct from the garden centres when it has already done all its decomposing. So this is ready to put on the garden. So I've got this shrub here that I planted, it's Amelanchier. I planted this a couple of months ago, and now I want to apply a mulch. Now, one of the reasons I use the organic one is because I've got very poor quality soil. My soil there's a lot of hardcore underneath it, so I want to improve the condition of it. And this farmyard manure will do that as well, because once I've applied it to the surface, then nature's going to take over and incorporate that into the soil by earthworm activity and also other sort of organisms in the soil. It's going to come up, they're going to bring this down into the soil to improve it. This also works very well on a heavy clay soil. It will have exactly the same effect. So it will condition the soil, improve the structure of it, improve the soil overall. So what I'm going to do, you need to be careful when you're applying this mulch. I'm just going to add it to the surface. You see all sorts of rubbish in this soil. It's all the soil, grass, etc. So I'm going to add a thick layer of mulch. Now remember, when you're handling anything like this, make sure you wear gloves. Any sort of cuts or scratches on your hand, bacteria can get in and cause a problem. So really make sure when you're handling any sort of compost that you wear gloves. So this is farmyard manure here, but you can use things like homemade garden compost will work. Bought compost, that will also work. Bark chippings. You can even put gravel down, that's an organic one. It's not going to do much to the condition of the soil, but it will improve the drainage. Okay, so here I'm not going too close to the stems. I don't want them to rot, they need to be kept clear. Ideally, I would like that to cover the whole garden, but if you haven't got enough to do that, it can be quite expensive if you're buying it. Just make sure that you've got a nice layer. So it's better to have a smaller, thicker layer than too thin over the whole of the garden. I'm just going to put a little bit more around there at the back. So mulches can be used for decorative purposes as well. There's all sorts of bark, different colour barks you can get. And if you're covering the whole of a bed with a mulch, it can actually make it look brilliant as well. And that's mulches.